Good morning, readers. Well, today is launch day for Rushin Death, which is book number 5 in the Kenzie Kirsch Medical Thriller series. So, if you have been following that series, be sure to pick it up. If you don't know the rest of the series, it does work as a standalone. There's enough information in there for you to follow the characters and the backstory and all that sort of thing. If you want to, you can pick up the first book in the series, Unlawful Harvest, for 99 cents right now, or there is a bundle of books 1 through 4 together. So if you want to read everything, you can do that too. All right, I am going to do a short reading from Rushin Death today. And this is from chapter 2. Chapter 1 is kind of sets the scene a little bit with Kenzie on Christmas Day on the way to visit her mother. Kenzie walked up to the front door and rang the bell. She was surprised that Lisa wasn't standing at the door waiting for her. A motion detector at the entrance to the driveway alerted Lisa when someone was coming, and cameras were strategically placed so that Lisa would know who was there before ever opening the door. It was strange to have to ring the doorbell, and even stranger to wait for Lisa to answer it. Once she'd been standing there for a minute, Kenzie thought that maybe she should have just gone straight in, or rung the bell and then entered. It was, after all, her childhood home. She belonged there as much as anyone else. She wasn't a visitor. But having already stood there waiting for a full minute, she couldn't very well open the door and barge in. It would look odd. Eventually, she could hear barking, and the door opened. Kenzie looked past Lisa as she opened the door. A dog? They'd never had a dog, even in her childhood. Kenzie and Amanda had begged for a dog or other pet, and Lisa had never allowed them to have anything. Dogs were messy and unruly and needed to be properly trained, walked every day, and cleaned up after. Cats shed and clawed the furniture. There was no question of being allowed a rodent that might escape into the house, or of birds or reptiles, perished the thought. Kenzie looked at the friendly dog who came to the door and was eager to thrust her muzzle into Kenzie's hand and get some ear scratches. Kenzie turned her surprised eyes to Lisa. "Mackenzie, this is a surprise," Lisa said, sounding more like it was an intrusion than a welcome. "You didn't tell me you were coming." "I wanted it to be a surprise." Kenzie shook her head at the dog. "When did you get a dog? I never thought you would agree to have one in the house." And this dog was no teacup poodle or other pampered pooch that Kenzie would have pictured any of Lisa's socialite friends with. It was a large German shepherd, mostly brown in color. Lisa's eyes crinkled into a smile, something that they had not done when she found Kenzie waiting on her doorstep. She stepped forward and kissed Kenzie on both cheeks. "Come in and I'll tell you all about it." Kenzie was relieved to be invited in. She'd been starting to worry that Lisa didn't want her there after all, and would send her smartly on her way with a brick of Christmas cake and well wishes. Lisa pushed the door open wider to allow Kenzie in. The dog pressed up against Kenzie's leg, looking for more affection. "What's her name?" Kenzie asked, as they walked through the great hall and found seats in Lisa's cozy sitting room. Lisa sat on the couch and patted the cushion beside her, inviting the dog to jump up, which she did. Kenzie shook her head. Not only did Lisa get a dog, but it was allowed in the house and up on the furniture. It was time to check the weather in hell, and be on the watch for the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. "You don't recognize her?" Lisa asked, a slight smile playing over her lips. "Well," Kenzie studied the animal. The dog did look like one she'd seen just a couple months earlier, but there was no way it was the same dog. No way. I mean, she looks like Lola. The dog gave a small bark of acknowledgement and panted, tongue hanging out, looking very pleased. Lisa played with the dog's ears. "Yes, it's Lola." "But how did you end up with Lola? I don't understand. What is she doing here?" "She lives here. We rescued her." Kenzie looked at her. Kenzie shook her head in disbelief. "But this dog had a deadly virus. I was sure she would be put down." Lisa covered the dog's ears. "Don't say that in front of her," she said in good humor. "It took a lot of work to convince them to treat and release her. They wanted to you-know-what and examine her brain. I told them there was no way they were going to do that, so they might as well put it out of their minds." Lisa said it as if it was a foregone conclusion, the same way she had told it to the scientists and medical officials who wanted to euthanize the dog to examine her brain and any other effects of the virus on her body. Lisa's firm, take no prisoners approach had allowed her to cross most barriers in her life. She had been able to go places and accomplish things that Kenzie would never have expected people to allow this older, wealthy white woman to do. And that was all it took? Kenzie asked skeptically. Lisa shrugged. I needed to remind them that the dog had been in the papers, and if a reporter followed up on the story to find out that they had put her down, even if it was for good reason, there'd be quite a backlash. I told them that they could do whatever imaging and lab tests they wanted, and I would cover all of those costs and bring her back whenever they needed to do follow-up tests. They would look like heroes in the media instead of villains. Kenzie nodded slowly. Lots of money, authoritative orders, and pointing out how it would look in the eyes of the public. Lisa knew how to use all the tools at her disposal. So, how is she? How did they treat her? There's no sign of the virus persisting? I believe it was the same protocol you and Zachary were given in the hospital. They monitored her virus levels very carefully, and there's been no sign it has come back in her follow-up appointments. Every week initially, and every month for the next year. Lisa stroked Lola's head. She doesn't seem to mind all the poking and prodding. She thinks they're just giving her attention. Why did you do it? I didn't see any reason the dog should have to be put down just because of what happened to her. It wasn't her fault. She's been very well behaved and very friendly. I could see that from the moment I laid eyes on her. I didn't think you liked dogs. You would never let us have one as kids. Kids and dogs, Lisa rolled her eyes. I don't need that headache. I didn't need that headache. And with Amanda's health, they had put all their time and attention into caring for Amanda when her kidney disease was diagnosed. There had been some close calls with her health as a child, and she'd spent a lot of time in the hospital. With Lisa always at the hospital, at Amanda's side, it would have been challenging to take care of a dog, taking it out for regular walks or whatever else it needed. They could have hired someone, but that would have defeated the purpose of having a dog for the family. Kenzie would have promised them that she would do everything necessary to take care of the dog, but Lisa was probably right with her sigh of kids and dogs. Kenzie would never have done everything required for the dog's upkeep. Walks several times a day, feeding, vet appointments, making sure it didn't chew all of Walter's or Lisa's shoes. Kenzie had been a fairly reliable child, but she probably could not have kept up with everything. I suppose. I never expected you to get one, though. I never expected to get one, Lisa acknowledged, petting Lola, who was now settling down to go to sleep. Kenzie looked around the sitting room. The first thing that she noticed was that there was no tree. Not just a smaller tree and a reduction in the number of decorations around the house. No tree at all. No lights, no garlands, no string of Christmas cards received from her friends and foundations. It could have been any time of year. Zachary could have been there without worrying about triggering flashbacks to the fateful Christmas day he had suffered when he was 10. There hadn't been any trees in the Great Hall either. Kenzie could remember years when there'd been 2 or 3 huge trees, branches reaching upward, looking as though they'd been decorated by a hired interior design consultant. Maybe they had been, but Kenzie thought she remembered Lisa doing all the work. It must have been a massive effort. In the years that Kenzie lived on her own, she sometimes decorated a small tabletop tree. Still, she couldn't be bothered with a full-sized one, untangling and testing out lights, going through boxes of ornaments to find the most important one, and then coordinating colors and textures. One little tree, preferably pre-lit, with a few personal touches. But Lisa hadn't done even that much. Kenzie didn't see any sign of Christmas. Of course, she hadn't been through the whole house, and maybe Lisa had decorated another room. There would be outside lights, surely. Kenzie heard footsteps on the stairs and looked up to see Walter. Only it wasn't her father at all. All right, so there is the setup for Rushin Death. Find out what you can about who the visitor was, what happened to Walter, and you can pick that up in my store or at any of the retailers today. And don't forget also that I am counting up to my 100th book, which is going to be released in June. So Sanctuary in the Stream will come out June 16th and be number 100 for me. So you can follow that journey on social media. And don't forget that there is also an accessibility pack available for Rushin Death. So that includes the ebook where you can change the type size, line settings, colors, that sort of thing on your device, and a PDF in Open Dyslexia font for dyslexic readers, and also an accessible computer narrated version of Rushin Death in MP3 format so that you can listen to that. Okay, talk to you next week.